Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. I hear him chat from the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the walking. Just too sharp with the prize. White girls better tell me I'm awesome. Yeah, hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Cold like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the sheets. You can't go out, man, forget my peace. You take the west side, take on the east. I'ma put him in the cage, never let out the. I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys. Not so tough, but mans keep walking, yeah. Just too sharp with the prize. White girls, better tell me I'm awesome, yeah. Hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that.
I want to talk about leadership for a second, and not just because we seem to be led by fools all over the place. The Republican debates a few blocks from here while Donald Trump was in Hialeah, mispronouncing a lot of Latin names. But the reason I want to talk about leadership is because as a leader, as someone who's attempting to lead here and uncomfortable with it, I have a lot of blind spots. I can lack self-awareness. So I don't know how you guys, and I haven't asked you this privately, I don't know how you guys would actually describe me to someone else as someone who is in charge of this. So the answer to that is what? Uncomfortable though this may be, that we haven't had the conversation privately and now I put it in front of everybody publicly. As just describe what it's like to have me in charge of your careers.
We're comfortable with Roy answering for the group here.
Hey, my career has definitely grown under you, so I really appreciate you. I'm sure everybody else does as well.
I don't think that's accurate.
I agree.
And it's not the.
We're not afraid of you at all.
I don't tell people you're weird.
You
Weird.
You don't tell them I'm weird.
I don't do that. I don't.
I was having this conversation with my wife just yesterday that I am somehow the least weird in my family. She finds that shocking. I find it shocking. I'm promising you that
This is
so.
genuinely honest. When someone tells me they met you, I apologize. I go, he's like that with everybody.
The reason I bring this up.
How quickly did he touch his face as a coping mechanism? It's usually my follow-up.
That's not. You still haven't given a good answer to the question. You deferred over here to Roy.
And that was a good answer.
Great answer.
Well, I'm glad you answered it, Roy, because this is headed your way, because I don't know how to lead in this particular realm. You have a new hockey podcast, After the Game with Roy. It's brilliantly named. Last night would have been a good night for me, that game, for me to tune in and hear what was happening after the game with Roy. But after the game with Roy is not after the game.
After some games with Roy.
It's after occasional games and not necessarily the ones I want to hear talked about. Because last night's would have been worth talking about. So can you give me your after the game exclusive content now, later than I would have gotten it? And can someone else answer the question for me, what our strategy is? Because I'm not leading it correctly if after that game we don't have an After the Game with Roy podcast.
Well, I was kind of nervous during that game, obviously. I want to talk about Mike Rowley, who's technically the Panthers' 7th defenseman. He was in the lineup last night. He was a -2. He took a penalty. And he had a terrible, terrible turnover that led into a goal in transition for the Capitals. Like, I don't think we're going to see him on Friday night's game.
So I'm
definitely
not going to hear. So after the game on Friday, I'm not going to hear a conversation about him.
You just heard about the 7th defenseman of the Florida Panthers.
Mike, is that why you were laughing? Because that Roy started his after that game. Roy started his after the game with Roy commentary with the 7th defenseman.
Well, just you asked for it, you got it, Toyota.
Ooh, Toyota, great sponsor.
What are we sponsoring, Roy?
My show, hopefully.
Okay,
the
but
money.
after the game, occasionally.
Occasionally.
Yeah, is the logo in Times New Roman yet?
Not yet.
We should get on that.
Nah.
We have the logo? Oh, we made a logo, I'm hearing. So,
oh, God.
Yeah, we'll throw that up there momentarily.
Mike maintains, because he is enjoying, there's some hate watching going on in sports right now with the Milwaukee Bucks and with Huberdeau, because Mike Ryan is now maintaining. He has proclaimed that every bit as bad as the Miguel Cabrera trade was, as the worst in the history of our market, the Panthers made a trade that was every bit that good in sending Huberdeau away somehow, who was great when he was with them and was an offensive machine, and then all of a sudden leaves here and falls apart and now has been benched.
I'd still argue at his peak, the best player, well, if we're doing peak, then it'd be Pavel, but arguably the greatest player in franchise history, Jonathan Huberdeau. Many fans were disappointed to see him go. Chris Whittingham stopped being a Panthers fan because they traded Jonathan Huberdeau for Matthew Tkachuk. Jonathan Huberdeau was recently benched, then come off the bench in a third period, and it was in a win. It was like a good tactical move. I think Kulikov has as many points as Jonathan Huberdeau right now. Jonathan Huberdeau has totally fallen off. He has totally gotten old at an incredible rate. The production is way, way down. Meanwhile, Matthew Tkachuk will be the greatest player in franchise history, probably the best American hockey player on the planet right now, and the Panthers are navigating big-time injuries to Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour, and they're doing so in a stretch in which they're 7-2-1.
And Bennett.
Yeah, they're missing Sam Bennett too. Sam Reinhart is among the league leaders in goals scored.
Rhino.
He has the overtime winner 13 seconds into overtime. A great game under the bright lights of TNT. It's a fun team, and they're well-positioned to make another postseason run. This is a consistency from this franchise that we've never seen before.
What do we think about buying low on Hubie? Bring him back. A little reunion?
There's no buying low on that contract.
Yeah, I know.
There's no buying low at all.
Then why'd you ask?
No, I'm just saying.
It's an albatross.
It's a time, like, his value's never going to be as low. I get that the money doesn't make sense.
You can't fit him on your cap. It's an albatross for them. If you want to go after somebody that is also benched, that's also by the name of Jonathan Gaudreau over in Columbus, is also finding himself in a similar situation. And the Panthers were kicking around on possible upgrades, and I hope that they're going to be active on the deadline, because this seems like it's a championship window for the Florida Panthers.
Well, let's just wait until everybody comes back, especially Sam Bennett, who came back during the Boston game, and we saw how the Panthers changed in how they played, and then he got injured again. He won't be back for a little bit. So once everybody comes back, it's going to be a different situation.
But after the game Friday, after the game with Roy, you're going to come out and you're going to be with David Dwork. And people, our audience is nuts. Our audience found Chris Cody yesterday bowling close to 300. They located him live streaming. He bowled 7 straight strikes. They will find you. So after the game with Roy, Jessica is unsuccessfully trying to stifle a yawn. Panthers talk does not do it for her, for Tony, for Jeremy. It doesn't
That's
feel.
not true.
It does. Well,
It's a temperature
on
response.
Bally Sports.
It's a cold thing.
Oh, okay.
is it Roy? Is it Roy's show? Is it that it hasn't debuted strongly enough with the?
Why are you doing this, Dan?
Put up the title again. It's got a great title.
I love the title and the title card. This is great graphic design by our team. After the game with Roy,
$350,000.
That's great. Thanks.
I
Good
don't
budget.
know how excited Heat fans are with being able to hate watch some of what is going on with Milwaukee. Tyler Hero has injured his ankle. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks. The Heat beat a Memphis team that John Morant really bleeped. God almighty. I mean, they are so bad, and Miami wins on the road.
I'm so mad that Boston figured out they needed to break up with Marcus Smart. The emotional ties to Marcus Smart was standing in the way of that franchise. Here's what you need to know as perspective of a Heat homer. Every time Marcus Smart had the ball in his hands, I was very happy. I was ecstatic. And that ball found its way into his hands so many times in crucial situations. I was thrilled with it. And now they figured it out, that he's not that good.
But this was super interesting to me in terms of the choice Brad Stevens made and some of the interesting office dynamics in play. When you hear talked about in Boston, the idea that Tatum and Jaylen Brown weren't quite strong enough to elbow Marcus Smart out of the way on our team. So Marcus Smart gets traded away from Boston and is a heart and soul guy, did his hair green, found his identity there.
Part of that is on the fans, too, in the franchise for allowing everybody to gas this guy up. They did it to themselves. Guy stinks.
Okay, that's
Bad
fine.
player.
They should not be excited about a player on their team.
No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't, not to the point where they make him a leader. Like, come on. You're Marcus Smart, my guy.
You can do what you're doing now. I'd still like to rewind for a second on the idea of a guy, defensive player of the year, dives on the floor, what Celtics fans believe they're about while they criticize Jaylen Brown can't go to his left, and Tatum kind of silky for what I want in my clutch time. I want someone built like the grit of Marcus Smart that management has to come in. It's an interesting move and emotionally bother the fan base. Drew Holiday was guarding Embiid last night, and well, for them to come in and say, it's not going to be about our young guys taking this team from Marcus. No, Marcus, you got to leave. We've got to give it to them now because they're not going to get past Miami the way that the condition that they were in. But I'm surprised because I didn't want to talk about Boston here. I wanted to talk about Milwaukee. Milwaukee's defensive rating stinks through 6 games. Lillard defensively stinks through the beginning part of the season. Taking fewer shots, smaller usage rate than he's had. And when him and Giannis are on the court together, their offensive efficiencies, the entire team, all of the lineups that have Dame and Giannis in them, worst offensive efficiency in the league. It's a tiny, tiny sample. They need time to figure all this stuff out.
I don't think they have a personnel problem. I think right now what's plaguing them is they changed their systems, and they might have a coaching problem. Like if you're going to make the big ambitious move to get Damian Lillard, maybe switch the timeline up and get Damian Lillard before you make the decision on the head coach, because say what you will about Mike Budenholzer and his faults come the postseason and his lack of adjustments, I think we all rate him more than Adrian Griffin. And what's happening to their defense, it can't just possibly be on Damian Lillard. And I've heard J.J. Redick speak on this. They've changed up their entire defensive system, and those guys, a little bit longer in the tooth, some of the guys that they were counting on. Brook Lopez was, third in the DPOY last year? A lot of the guys that they were going to if you look at their roster construction this year, to pick up the slack if someone at the point of attack was going to get blown by because you don't have Drew Holiday there anymore, were supposed to be nice little fail-safes. They're not right now.
It's a combination of personnel and adjustments, right? You lose Drew Holiday, who's such a tremendous perimeter defender, and you replace him with Damian Lillard, who objectively is not a great perimeter defender. Also, maybe sending a guy who doesn't really love to play defense to a place that he doesn't want to be to begin with. Maybe not the best idea to then assume he's going to give you top-tier effort on defense. But it's also schematically, offensively, that is a bit confusing. And I don't know the numbers after last night, but going into last night's games, Tyler Hero and Thomas Bryant had run 10 more pick and rolls this season than Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I cannot imagine.
Say that stat one more time.
Tyler Hero and Thomas Bryant had run 10 more pick and rolls together than Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I can't understand offensively how, if you're struggling with that unit, that's not the obvious adjustment to just try to get everybody comfortable.
I'm mad we're playing Thomas Bryant so much.
I should be mad that halfway into our first segment, we have discussed in more detail Thomas Bryant pick and rolls than the general threat to democracy that exists in the air at present and came to visit us in Miami last night. And I'm asking the audience this because I can't have some things be so consistently crazy that they simply become normal. I have to ask all of you, if I just sidled up to you in 2015, it's not that long ago, and any of you, and I'd come over and I'd said, listen to this, you're not going to believe this. At our Art and Cultural Center in 2023, there's going to be a Republican debate, and all of those candidates are going to be behind by 40 polling points. A man doing a rally, a reality television star doing a rally in Hialeah, with 91 felony counts that range from insurrection to documents around the toilet to just general fraud, corruption, and malfeasance. 91 of them. And might have an ankle bracelet while running the country. Might run from jail. If I told you all of that 8 years ago and then played for you this video of Donald Trump in Hialeah, and told you it's the 5th most expensive housing market in the United States now.
H-Town stand up.
And that he just is pandering to Nestor Cortez of the Yankees, and he does that sports fan thing. He knows nothing. He's just like, good fastball. Not really, but okay. Like, it's
like the only thing that's not good.
But he can't even not lie about that.
Got to pick something, right?
I mean, yeah, well, he doesn't have anything, and so he's faking his way.
He doesn't have his fastball.
Good off speed.
You know, he's got to know who some of the Yankees are. Come on, he didn't do good off speed. He just did fastball.
No breaking ball.
It was just fake. It was
The backdoor sliders off the wall.
Does he have a sweeper?
Off the charts.
Everything has wall in it.
I always say wall. It's a thing.
Let's play that sound from last night.
He'll do well. He's going to do very well. And your Congressman Carlos Jimenez, do you know him? Carlos Jimenez. Some people say Carlos Jimenez. Oh, you don't like him? Really? What's going on? Carlos, come on, Carlos. We got to get that straightened out. Carlos Jimenez. Really? Wow. Carlos.
Am I allowed to laugh?
I don't know. We're gonna.
Some people call him Carlos. I call him Jimenez.
Come on here, Carl.
Jimenez.
Carlos, when he realizes that a senator who endorsed Trump is not popular. That's how crazy.
Oh, you don't like him?
The Republican Party, and he just listens to his crowd, and he kind of turns on Carlos Jimenez. We got
Come on, Carlos.
Come on. These people know. I mean, he's a Trump Republican, and he's getting booed at a Trump rally. That's how deep the conservative party in this country has gone.
I say this, and it's hard, really, to laugh, to cry. Like, as I'm watching this, we get, and not just the Republicans, we've gotten the leadership we deserve, correct? All of it, just all of it bought by oil, all of it corrupt, all of it more overtly corrupt than we've ever seen before, even as we've known that it's overtly corrupt. You'd have to agree, I think, that it's never been where we arrive in 91 felonies and normal.
Less than 100.
This is normal.
Courtesy Newsmax for that video. Thank you.
This is where and in 2024 polling suggests that that's going to win. We get the leadership we deserve, correct?
I'm not that down on America. I feel like we deserve a little bit better.
But Biden is better, but not also a very good leader.
You got to ride the hot hand. You got to ride the hot hand. His election record's pretty strong. No, none of this is great. And again, just to call back to something that I said yesterday, I'm a little uncomfortable normalizing this, but I also don't want to care all that much till next November, because trust me, I'll get there. I'll get there.
Well, maybe that is the way to go. Just sit it out. Roy,
there were encouraging results in the election, and what the Biden administration needs to do is make Election Day next year about abortions and rights, because those are very popular winning positions on the ballot, and so much so that Rick Santorum is lamenting, well, that's not how you run sometimes a proper democracy is not the way that you run the country, because we conceal these elections if these important issues aren't actually on the ballot because people care about their rights. So that's what the Democrats need to do, and I do think most of America will remember, as Molly Jong-Fast mentioned earlier in the week when she joined us, that once he's back in the public eye and not just on Newsmax, once he's become the candidate for the Republican Party and you can no longer ignore him, people are going to be reminded of what that era felt like and then be motivated to go back to the polls.
I do wonder, though, how the average person just listening to this, when I point out the 8 years ago thing and how much things have changed since then. I don't consider myself someone who has dabbled in politics. I've gotten and maybe this is a blind spot of mine, because over the last 10 years, I've legitimately been confused how it is. But before I understood what a Tea Party was or knew what Breitbart was, I was legitimately confused at the beginning that I would get held up as somebody who was the enemy of whatever Breitbart was because I was making arguments on behalf of black guys celebrating in the end zone. It wasn't even about Colin Kaepernick then. It was just all more hidden in the Rush Limbaugh dog whistle days. And so I got caught by surprise. I'm not equipped to talk Israel and Hamas with you, especially not in a climate where we can't simply agree that there cannot be the slaughtering of innocents. In a civilization, in a place that calls itself civilized, you cannot be slaughtering. We have to be able to agree on just that, on that much. You cannot slaughter innocent anybody's. And to find myself...
Look at us. Just a couple minutes ago, we were talking about the 7th Panthers defenseman.
We were, and we talked about Thomas
Bryant having more pick and rolls.
Pick and rolls.
With Tyler
It's a pretty
Hero.
crazy stat. I mean, we got to be honest.
Time
That's
and
pretty
Greek
crazy.
Freak. Wow, this show. This show's versatile.
It was right here is what I'm saying. It's down the street. You could smell it.
And I could also ignore it, thankfully.
Doesn't
Thank
smell
God.
good, by the way.
It's not. It's a little harder to ignore when
Carlos!
when it's in the middle of...
You don't like him.
Chimenez, though. Come on.
Let's just say.
Some people are calling him that.
I like that the correction was Jimenez. Like, it still wasn't right.
None
the
of it.
correction still wasn't correct.
Tried 3 times, even said some people call him Jimenez, and none of them were right.
Carlos.
I was encouraged.
Man, I really hate that guy.
Small victories, right? In Hialeah, which is a stronghold. That is Trump country right there. Not a lot of people were at that thing. When you compare it to the numbers of a few years ago, it's about half full.
Fake news.
Because when it comes to Trump, I'm the eternal optimist. It's about half full. And a lot of those people were media or adjacent to the campaigns or politicians looking to get the rub. Like, I do think, I hope against hope that most people are going to take my approach, which is I'll get there when you need me. I don't need this bogging me down because I'm far too consumed with Mike Riley, the Florida Panthers' 7th defenseman.
I don't know. You got to pay attention to these off-year elections and the midterms, though, because everything starts locally. You got to pay attention to that.
I understand. And the midterm elections were great for the Democrats and really encouraging stories. The incumbent Democrat governor of Kentucky kept his seat, and that's been a pretty solid indicator the last 5 elections. So goes the state of Kentucky, so goes the nation. So there's encouraging things. Ohio had a lot of good stories too because people came out to vote for their rights, for abortion, for legal marijuana. You had these big, sexy ballot items, and that's the lesson that Democrats need to take. That's what this election is about. It's about keeping freedom, democracy, not normalizing someone that under everybody's eyes tried to steal this election and is still actively trying to steal this election. I think that's what you make the election for, and then you just vote the other old guy in.
But what do you do about the Republican Mississippi governor getting his seat back with everything that happened in a black precinct with them running out of ballots? What do you do with that, though?
I mean, you hope that because he is the challenging candidate and not the incumbent, that there is only so much electoral interference that he can have, but there are in these states Republican strongholds that are going to try to intimidate and suppress votes. We know the game. It's the same game that was there 4 years ago. In some states, they're making it even more difficult. You got to turn out to the polls in the same way that you did 4 years ago.
Keep in mind, this is the same guy that's embroidered with the Brett Favre volleyball stadium situation in Mississippi.
The stuff in Mississippi is really foul. Anna
To be
Wolf.
fair, I don't have high hopes for Mississippi.
Yeah.
I wasn't really counting on them.
But I'd just like to place in front of the audience the idea of, and I know they don't want this from us. I don't know that they necessarily want Panthers talk or Thomas Bryant pick and roll talk either.
Hashtag FSU week.
But if you're someone who wants shut up and dribble, or you don't want your sports show, and I get it. If you don't want your sports show, you want your sports show to be the Cartoon Network that allows you to get away from real life. But if not under what seems like obvious threat to your peace, your freedom, your democracy, if not, then when? Like when? Then you're just never good with it. You're never good with it.
Carlos!
Trends, popular things, it seems like they expire faster than they used to. I remember when the turnover chain was a quaint thing at the University of Miami. People seemed to like it. Countrywide, the rare University of Miami thing that people liked, which is that team celebrates turnovers by putting a chain on the sideline. What I saw last night was confusing to me. Miami of Ohio and Akron, there have been many permutations of this. Many of them are really dumb, but I don't know. I thought initially when I saw this tire around the head, the turnover tire, a car tire.
That's a Photoshop, no? That's real?
How'd they get it over the helmet?
It seems like a tight fit, but if I told you, if I didn't give you any access to the history of the turnover chain and I told you this person has turned the ball over and this is their punishment, they get a tire around the head, you would say that that is somebody being punished for turning the ball over, not for creating a turnover.
More punishment than reward would look to me. Yeah. But that's also, the tire's whack.
Well, this absolutely makes sense to me because Akron is the home of the Goodyear tire plant. So obviously, if this is a sponsor,
all right, let's show this again, and I want again to normalize what Roy is saying here, where he's saying, this is totally normal to me. This totally makes sense to me. In what world does this make sense to you? A tire around the head to celebrate a turnover. You're right. It's Goodyear. Is Goodyear an NIL? Does that kid get money off of wearing their tire on the sideline? Is this a paid advertisement?
At Akron?
Akron doesn't have NIL.
I mean, I'm sure they do, but
Not that much, probably.
Come on, you're at Akron.
It's Akron.
The Zips. I mean, their nickname is Zips.
It's not a great
They
nickname.
get Zip.
Yes, it's not an excellent nickname. Is there a lot worse than the tire? Have you seen a lot worse than the tire? Mike was talking earlier about a bone of some sort that a team had.
Well, there was plenty of opportunities to see the turnover bone in Raleigh, thanks to Tyler Van Dyke. But North Carolina State has a turnover bone, and I wasn't prepared for it because, the first time I saw it was on screen, and then someone said, helpfully, and there's the turnover bone.
That's aggressive.
It's phallic and ribbed for someone's pleasure.
I mean, if you told me that was the devil's erection, not a bone. Like, what kind of bone are they going for there? Because that looks like the devil's erection.
It looks like that's about to sexually assault Jonah Hill, and this is the end.
It's very large. How large is that bone?
It's about average.
Mike Ryan mentioned Tyler Van Dyke, and I want to talk about him a second. Jessica, because I have my remorse about how to discuss this. I'm really on the line on this in a way that, to the degree that ethics are involved in any of what we do, I imagine a college kid, though a paid professional, falling apart like that with his identity in being whoever he thought he was going to be when he came out of the gate with 400-yard games at the beginning of his career, and now is clearly playing a football game where nobody on his team trusts him. Like, you can see it play out, and shouldn't, because he's making very bad decisions with plenty of time. And I don't know how critical to be of this person who looks scared to me, looks like they're lacking confidence, because I have no interest in attacking that weakness of a young person, paid professional or not. I'm not interested in castigating him by criticizing the performance when I imagine a college kid going through that. When he looks obviously scared to us, what do I do when
I think they trusted him.
Oh,
I think
man.
they kept him in it. They gave him plenty of opportunities. I think they trusted him. They would have made a change if they didn't trust him, and we'll find out if they make it on the coaching staff by saying they didn't trust him, which is inaccurate because they trusted him, and they didn't call plays that showed. If you want to tell me they called something rudimentary for Emory Williams, his first start with Clemson.
I genuinely feel bad as someone with a microphone taking out a college kid critically who's probably already gnawing his face off, because if you drop back to pass in that sport and are scared because you played with 2 years of injuries and you don't trust your body and you don't feel like you have whatever is needed here to win this football game, my guess is you're in a pretty mentally frail place that must feel alone, and that the way people talk about it isn't going to help. Because it's going to be unkind. It's going to be cruel because these guys are all under helmets and they're not human beings. They're not kids. They're Van Dyke, who's got my team with 3 losses, and I don't think I should have 3 losses.
There's a little bit of this happening with other college football quarterbacks as well. Like Caleb Williams was seen crying after the game against Washington, and there was all sorts of discourse of, no one wants to draft a kid who's crying after a game, and then the opposite, which is he's making millions of dollars. Of course we can criticize him. And to me, college football is not about shitting on mostly teenagers. And I do think that you have to, especially, Caleb Williams is a great example because in so many instances, USC's defense has let down their offense and led to some really disappointing results this season. And I think you could say a similar thing about this Miami coaching staff. You can't just entirely blame Tyler Van Dyke. He's not the first college quarterback to have limitations. You have to be able to work around someone who's not a perfect player. You're not playing with Tom Brady every single week when you're a college offensive coordinator. And it's frustrating, especially for fans, to see Tyler Van Dyke backslide a lot from what he was as a younger player to what he is now. So I don't think you can entirely blame him for a poor performance. Although, he's not a perfect player. No college football quarterback, no college player is. They all have things that they're good at and things that they're bad at. And I think what is frustrating is seeing the level of play go so significantly backwards since the season started. And, you could blame injuries, you can blame whatever you want, but I do struggle with blaming the player and just saying he's a bad player or he just can't do this, because there are ways that coaches can work around things like that and still be able to do more than what Miami was on Saturday.
This is learning for them. As Kelly Clarkson says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Have a little wonder. You're
totally right about that.
Thank you.
And the thing that I wanted to explore with you guys, because whether you want to make them kids or professionals.
I think you're hitting it on the head, Dan. And I think you're probably hitting it on the head too much. Just to be clear, we're not talking about a small thing. We're not talking about someone that can't throw a sideline pattern. We're talking about someone that when they drop 8, he will turn the ball over if he tries to test that defense. And he's shown you that not just during this stretch, he's shown you that his entire career. And the reason why you're seeing it more is because he put more tape out there and they realize this offensive line, we're not going to beat them. Let's drop 8. I think you can blame the coaching staff in some respects, but the way you blame the coaching staff is they didn't make the change. We're not talking about a small thing. The adjustments to win that game were changing the quarterback and maybe getting the ball in the hands of playmakers like Rashard Smith, who didn't touch the ball at all, who's shown you this season he can be dynamic, has an 80-yard run. You can line him up in the backfield. You can do other things. But when it comes to a quarterback that simply can't throw the ball downfield against 8, and you're seeing that every play, the only coaching criticism that I have is, why are you still putting this guy out there?
Isn't part of the job with college quarterbacks, though, to help them grow as players in learning some of these things, right? Because Tyler Van Dyke, and I believe the case here is 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 different years for him. And so he really hasn't had much of an opportunity to grow with a singular coaching staff. And now you're dealing with a coaching staff that, by all admission, is seemingly pretty conservative when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. I believe,
except
right?
when they should be in victory formation.
Well,
then
right.
they're the riskiest coaching staff on earth.
But I guess a team that wants to power run, right?
They're conservative now because their quarterback has forced them to be
Well, so I
conservative.
guess the question would be,
guys,
right?
he looked great.
No.
When defenses were trying to get after him, he looked great. And then he put film out there. This one's not hard to figure out.
Well, I guess the question would just be, and it's actually not a criticism as much as a question, is what are your adjustments as a coaching staff to that, other than just pulling the kid out of the game who was supposed to be a top 10 pick? Like, if he has that level of talent to begin with, what do you do from there?
Also, I don't think it's a good faith argument to say he was supposed to be a top 10 pick. Yes,
I heard that here.
Based off his first 5 games as a pro in Rhett Lashley's offense, you thought you had a first-round quarterback, and that was a projection. And since then, all he's done is backslide in the eyes of scouts. Why? It's because of him. And that's fine. He's not good enough for this team. He can still salvage his career. Maybe he goes back with Rhett Lashley, who figured something out with him. God bless. But the quarterback is clearly holding this team back. And I think I'm saying that respectfully and not calling the kid a dope. And I'm not saying he sucks. I'm just saying what I'm seeing on the field is not good.
Did I say that you did any of those things? I'm telling you that I'm struggling with how to critique performance
Just told you how to do it.
because I've never been gentle around someone who looks scared or felt, like in sports, or felt the need to reach out to them.
look, sometimes a college player just doesn't have it. They're not all going to be great. That is what I think is great about the sport, is that there's such a wide array of talents on display. But I also think that it's fair when you see a player go from ACC accolades to potentially getting benched the rest of the season. I don't know if he's going to play this weekend against Florida State after the performance against NC State, especially when you have other quarterbacks that have come in and won games for Miami this season. I think it's fair to wonder what the coaching staff has done for him. And like Jeremy said, when you're on a team that has had change year after year at that offensive coordinator position, which is very important for a quarterback, it's fair to wonder if it's not all entirely this guy's fault. So, I mean, saying like there's tape out there and everyone knows how to cover him, like you could say the same about every player on every team. After you play more games, yeah, you find more ways to beat them, and it's up to the coaching staff to determine if there's a way to work around that. Maybe there isn't. Maybe he just doesn't have it. But I think that it's fair to question all of the angles.
Can we
involved.
examine though the professionalization of all of this? Because to me, it's the most important. To me, it's the most interesting part of it. We've made in Kevin Durant, a creature of the social media age, a superstar who seems to be part troll, embittered, less happy than maybe he could be, because he comes from a generation that was addicted to the devices, and now he's 34, and he's an old guy. Now we're raising kids on the professionalization of all this stuff that is cruel in the way that we analyze it, because we can be cruel in our fandom and we can rationalize away all sorts of bad behavior because we're emotional, we're mad. Tyler Van Dyke, you suck. Tyler Van Dyke, you suck. You're like, why does my quarterback suck? And whatever that is happening to a 21-year-old that is different than a 32-year-old, I really am wondering the mental toll that it takes. Like, why wouldn't Caleb Williams be sobbing on the sidelines? It seems like a lot of pressure to put on young people. Like, we do it to young tennis players, we do it to children in gymnastics. So we do it, but I'm legitimately thinking, I felt bad when I left the show the other day. I felt bad about how I talked about a college kid because he played poorly. And I don't know what to do with that feeling because it hasn't existed for me before.
I think it's fair to criticize these players. Like, that's what we're supposed to do as people that cover the sport. It's fair to be critical of how they play. I think there's a line, though, and like I myself try not to cross line. I'm sure I do sometimes. Like, no one's perfect, but I try not to cross that line where it becomes not critical and just cruel or mean-spirited.
Name calling.
Those are things that I think I've seen a lot of with coverage of players in college football that I'm like, ugh. Like, I can see how if you're a fellow college student, like, maybe you engage in that. But then, like, once you're an adult, like, it just, like, that's weird. Don't do that.
Yeah. There's a difference in the way that I talk about Marcus Smart, who stinks, and Tyler Van Dyke. There's a huge difference in how I do it. And it's just matter-of-factly, he's not performing well, struggles against his zone. That's what you're seeing out there. I think the coaching staff has given him chance after chance. The reason why he has a new OC this year, are you arguing for Josh Gaddis? I don't understand. Like, we all thought.
Depends. Does he know the signs or not?
Well, I've reverse engineered Connor Salians being to blame for us being a year behind schedule, because he made Josh Gaddis look good.
I'm here for the conspiracy
in my
theory.
mind, like, Josh Gaddis got a Broyles Award.
And tricked you into thinking the Broyles Award was a significant competitive advantage.
So whenever I'm critical of Connor Salians, just know I blame him for last year's offense.
Okay.
Maybe Miami was sign stealing with Manny Diaz, and they just haven't kept sign stealing.
It's to me, it's not overly complicated. If you're watching the games and the nature of his interceptions, I understand from the outside, like, what's going on there? He used to be really good. He had a streak that we've only seen Joe Burrow replicate in this sport, and that was 2 years ago. How is he getting worse every year? Surely it's got to be the coaching staff, because me, national voice, I don't respect Mario Cristobal as a head coach. I don't respect these offensive coordinators. Surely it's their fault.
I love this character.
But
national voice?
Me, national voice, because, I mean, I think the Mario Cristobal's job, we know he's not this tactical genius, right? It's his job to put the right coaches around the talent and to surround Tyler Van Dyke with talent. He fixed an offensive line in a year. He is super protected, to the point that Tyler Van Dyke, a month into the season, was the nation's highest-ranked Pro Football Focus quarterback. Remember, we were throwing parades. We have Tua and we have Tyler Van Dyke, quarterback central over here. He has a running back in Mark Fletcher that is now healthy, running at 5 yards a clip. Say what you will about the wide receivers. Lord knows they try to upgrade over the offseason. They're better than last year. What's the issue? It's what Tyler Van Dyke is running into more and more.
Are you hopeful this weekend, or are you lacking optimism?
I think the quarterback has been the biggest issue since Georgia Tech facing this team. And I think if they had more from that position, they'd be winning a lot more games this year. Now, is the answer a true freshman quarterback in Emory Williams? I'd like to trust him a hell of a lot more than we did against Clemson, though I rate Clemson's defense more than I rate Florida State's.
That's a tough start on the road. That's a tough
it
start
is.
for a young – I mean, man.
Look, and the argument for Tyler, by the way, and I do know some in that building are pounding the table for Tyler because of the veteran savvy, because they think he has a better grasp of the offense, what have you. And Florida State plays man coverage. For them to go zone, although that doesn't take a genius, players can figure it out and they're malleable, they can drop into zone coverage too. But their identity defensively is man coverage. Tyler does pretty well with that. And if you're going to blitz him, even better. Tyler does some really good things. He just struggles against something that's pretty basic, and it's pretty inexplicable.
Chris Cody, I have been negligent.
What's up?
I've been negligent for several
sing
days. I don't want you to sing again. I do appreciate it's why you're the master producer that you are, and it's why you're beelining it for the executive producer chair that Mike Ryan will someday vacate, even though we will always pull him back in. It's because you know that Dan is talking, yammering too much about politics. How about I put my fist on my hip and try to sing to see if I could get the show back? And look, you did. I salute you, although we did detour into Tyler Van Dyke land. But
Carlos.
The thing that I didn't get a chance to talk about at any point this week that I know you guys, you and Mike Ryan, I believe this is the only business partnership, although Tony is trying to negotiate with Billy. We don't have a lot of business partnerships here, but you and Mike Ryan own a highlight team that we talked very little about last year because you guys were last place awful after winning the championship. We talked about it too much for 1 year, didn't talk about it at all second year, but you were just with Roger Stone and Udonis Haslam and Ray Lewis as you guys
really unfair what you're doing there.
As you bring back highlight.
All of this. I hate all of this right now.
Were you not with Roger Stone?
You didn't. You wanted to talk about highlight all the time last year. We're actually good this year, and you're refusing to talk about it. And just because Roger Stone just so happened to be there every Friday, you're blaming us for it.
Roger Stone.
Wait, what?
He's been there. Not my call.
Roger Stone is there. He's there in a suit. Udonis Haslam was there.
He just loves a great sport of highlight. And you know what? I guess we're a big unifying force.
Who can blame him?
The clones are surging, if that's what you're asking.
Thank you.
It's not what I was asking.
It's a good time to be a clone.
But you guys are very excited because you beat Jorge Masvidal's team the other day, swept them, ran them right off the court, 6 straight games, and no one's allowed you to talk about it. And this is ostensibly still local hour remnants, so go ahead, have at it. The floor is yours. The co-owners of the Cesta Cyclones that have gone on a hot streak this year and are winning again, the pear-shaped Manu, who is it looks like a bit like George Niang in body type. He is again playing well.
He's playing well, but the stars are at the bottom. The depth is where the difference between last year and this year. Bueno, Ikeda in our 4-5 slot, crushing it. Those guys, I mean, they're doing what they need to do. Bueno has turned the page. We struggled early in this season when Bueno wasn't playing well, but Bueno's got his shit together, and the team is just gelling. Nobody vibes. They're making TikToks together. Nobody is vibing like the Cesta Cyclones right now.
Presently top of the table. If you look at possible points remaining, especially considering thanks for the help wall Warriors, Udonis's Robote Renegades and us are probably going to be battling for that top spot, and it's big in highlight and battle court to get that top seed because you get the bye into the finals. We're looking like a true playoff team right now. You can watch tomorrow night's game on ESPN3. If you can't be there in person at Magic City, like Roger Stone might be, to watch your Cesta Cyclones play. And remember, if you're going out there, you're indirectly supporting Ron McGill's conservation fund, because if you say that you're there for him, $10 a head goes to that foundation. Ron McGill, I know, will be out there on Friday. I, unfortunately, am going to be in the podunk town of Tallahassee, so I'm going to miss this one. But Chris Cody's going to bring the energy out there. Clone Cartel in full force.
Shout out also Jedin shifting to the backcourt. I mean, it's just been a game changer. He went from being like front court guy, he was like around average. He's stepped his shit up.
Mike Fuentes just from the other room, wrote that in a green marker on a piece of paper, walked over here and put it up against a window for Chris Cody to remember. And I just think that's great producing.
That
by
is
Mike
good
Fuentes.
producing. So is Roger Stone like?
undercutted-
Is he
just
like in the
undercutted.
owner's box with you guys?
No.
Not in our suite.
No. No. The time that he was there, he was just in GA.
Isn't it one big suite?
Gen Pop.
Nah, but we have like our couches are kind of block off our area.
I mean, he will be in Gen Pop.
I heard that someone asked to see his Nixon tattoo.
No, you're making that up. Stop it.
I didn't. I'm not.
Stop it.
You're accusing Dan of lying?
Look, highlights
What
forever.
is happening here?
No one asked him. No one asked him to see his Richard Nixon
Yeah,
tattoo.
he
You
just
just wanted to
showed it.
shoehorn that thing in there for the second time this
You don't
week.
have to ask. He'll just show
How?
it to you.
I didn't even know.
You weren't at the game. You don't know.
I
You haven't been in a game all season, Dan Le Batard. How about you turn up on Friday and ask to see Roger
I
Stone's
went
tattoo?
last year, and all you guys did was lose.
Well, we're good this year. Come on out.
I
There's the Roger Stone tattoo.
was
Guy
that
does not skip back day.
Yeah.
BT Dubs.
Tries looking
cow.
good, too.
Holy cow.
I really thought you guys had ruined it because
Carlos.
you owned the you owned the team.
Guys, we had an off year last year. You know, we had some injuries, and credit to Chris Cody, Mike Fuentes, and me calling in at 3 a.m. from Greece. We drafted a good team this year.
It's a tough spot to be when you come in second place. If you lose in the championship, the placement that you get in the draft, it is just a difficult spot to draft from, and that's what happened to us
They legislate
the year
parity.
before. So it's just I would say it's basically impossible to win from if you lose in the championship the previous year. That's the way they've set up the league.
And if the league continues to expand, thanks to the great leadership of Pitbull, we're probably going to be in a tough position next year again. Ebbs and flows when it comes to the sport of battle court.
I did not know that you were going to Tallahassee. I believe the last time you went was sad, right?
The last time I went to Tallahassee was probably the last road game that I saw Miami win. It was 2017. Daryl Langham. Malik Rozier to Daryl Langham. Miami's Aquarium touchdown!
In the rain.
I've never experienced a game quite like that where I couldn't feel my hands and I was just stunned by the fact that we had actually won because that broke a pretty substantial streak for FSU in this rivalry. A lot of heartbreaking losses for Miami. So I just stayed there, stunned. They forced us out of the stadium because I barely moved. I'm hoping for something similar. I'm not too hopeful. FSU is really good this year. Respect to them.
You're going to have your face
I'm on the
painted?
14 and a half.
Face painted?
Carlos.